Picture this. Last Tuesday, everyone on your feed was talking about that green juice. By Friday, you'd ordered the blender. Harmless, right? Now picture this. 1930s Germany. Ordinary people, teachers, doctors, shopkeepers, watching their neighbors adopt increasingly extreme beliefs. By 1939, they're participating in atrocities they would have found unthinkable 5 years earlier. Same mechanism, different stakes. And here's the question that should terrify you. Which version are you living through right now? The philosopher René Girard spent his life studying this pattern. We think we make independent choices about what we want, what we believe, what we buy. But there's a mechanism running beneath all of it, and it doesn't just spread desires. It spreads delusion, bad decisions, and collective insanity faster than any virus humanity has ever encountered. Welcome to the mimetic trap. René Girard discovered something unsettling in the 1960s that explains why your teenager suddenly needs the exact shoes their friend has, and why entire nations can march toward catastrophe while convinced they're making rational choices. He said, "Desire is a triangle. There's you, there's the object you think you want, and there's the model, the person who made it desirable in the first place." A child doesn't inherently crave a specific toy. They see another child playing with it, and suddenly it becomes the most important thing in the world. An adult doesn't naturally want a luxury car until they see it representing something about the person driving it. This is mimetic desire, and it's deeper than marketing or peer pressure. We are masterful imitators operating on biological autopilot. Mirror neurons fire when we watch others perform actions. Emotional contagion spreads whether we consent or not. Your brain is essentially a sophisticated downloading machine, constantly absorbing patterns from everyone around you. But here's the critical insight that Girard uncovered. This imitation mechanism has absolutely no quality control. It downloads the breakthrough innovation and the dangerous conspiracy theory with identical efficiency. It mirrors the wise mentor's hard-earned wisdom and the fool's confident nonsense at the same speed. Our brains aren't wired to evaluate truth. They're wired for social synchronization. Now here's where things get disturbing. A 2018 MIT study analyzed how information spreads on social platforms and found that false news spreads 6 times faster than accurate news. Not because users are unintelligent, but because novelty triggers arousal, and arousal triggers sharing. But the advantage of foolish ideas goes deeper than just speed. They have evolutionary advantages in the marketplace of social contagion. First, they're frictionless to transmit. A nuanced argument requires cognitive effort to understand and pass along accurately. A binary narrative, a catchy slogan, a simple enemy to blame, that's instant download. You can absorb it in seconds and replicate it without losing any fidelity. Second, nonsense often wears the mask of certainty. Intelligent positions typically come with caveats, probabilistic thinking, acknowledgement of what we don't know. But humans don't imitate uncertainty very well. We mirror confidence. And nothing projects confidence like someone who has found a simple answer to a complex problem, even when that answer is demonstrably wrong. Third, and this is crucial, absurd ideas create stronger tribal bonds. When you believe something obviously false with a group of people, you're essentially signaling unconditional loyalty. You're saying, I trust this collective more than I trust my own critical faculties. That's incredibly powerful social glue. Wisdom is lonely. Delusion throws great parties. Now, if this pattern existed in pre-internet societies, mimetic contagion happened at the speed of gossip and community gatherings. Today, it happens globally in hours. Every major platform, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, is designed to show you what other people want, like, believe, and purchase. The algorithm doesn't evaluate accuracy. It rewards emotional intensity over careful reasoning. A measured, nuanced perspective gets a few dozen likes. An outraged, absolute statement that rides the current wave? Hundreds of thousands of engagements. The system actively selects for the most contagious content which is almost never the most intelligent content. We're not just trapped. We're trapped in a cage that's being shaken violently every 30 seconds. Let me give you a concrete historical example. In 1637, tulip bulbs in the Netherlands became so desirable that a single bulb could cost more than a luxurious house. Not because tulips suddenly became more beautiful or useful, but because everyone watched everyone else pay higher prices, which made the bulbs seem even more valuable. The desire fed on itself. When the bubble collapsed, fortunes evaporated overnight. The tulips hadn't changed. The collective delusion had simply run its course. We see the same pattern in political campaigns, stock market manias, and now in viral misinformation. The object of desire matters less than the social proof surrounding it. The pattern doesn't just spread individual bad ideas and stop there. It has an escalation engine built into the mechanism. Girard identified something he called mimetic rivalry. When multiple people want the same object because they're imitating each other, they don't peacefully coexist. They compete. And that competition intensifies the original desire itself, creating a feedback loop. You see this in housing markets where bidding wars drive prices beyond any rational valuation. In status competitions where people accumulate luxury goods they don't actually enjoy. Even in romantic pursuits where someone becomes more desirable simply because others desire them. The competition validates the prize. Now apply this escalation engine to beliefs and ideologies. When a flawed idea gains momentum, opposing it actually strengthens its grip on believers. Criticism becomes proof of persecution. Doubt becomes evidence of insufficient commitment. The idea doesn't need to defend itself with evidence anymore. It just needs to be the banner around which the group rallies against outsiders. This is how entire societies adopt provably false beliefs and defend them with increasing intensity. The falsehood isn't a weakness in the system. It's a feature that strengthens group identity and commitment. But here's the personal cost that nobody talks about. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you genuinely surprised yourself? Not surprised that you liked something, surprised by what you wanted in the first place, surprised by an opinion you held that nobody around you planted there, surprised by a goal you pursued that didn't have someone else's approval woven into it. For most people, the answer is never, or not since childhood. We're not just borrowing stupidity from others, we're outsourcing our entire interior life. You know that feeling of vague dissatisfaction even when you're getting everything you thought you wanted? That's not depression or ingratitude. That's what it feels like when you achieve someone else's desires using someone else's methods while wearing someone else's identity. You're a ghost, haunting your own life. And the cruelest part, you can't even grieve for your authentic self because you never met them in the first place. Here's where the trap becomes nearly impossible to escape. Once you've publicly committed to a desire or belief because everyone around you held it, that craving becomes woven into your identity. You didn't just buy the expensive sneakers because other people wanted them. Now you're a sneakerhead and that's part of who you are. You didn't just adopt a political position because your social circle held it. Now you're a partisan, and that shapes how you see the world. The imitative origin gets buried beneath layers of post hoc rationalization, and what remains is a seemingly authentic identity that you'll defend against all challenges. This is why evidence is powerless against identity. You're not asking someone to change their mind. You're asking them to perform a self-amputation. You think you're building an authentic self. You're actually assembling a collage of other people's desires, beliefs, and yes, their blind spots and errors in judgment. And this is where things turn dark. Because when mimetic rivalry reaches a crisis point, when everyone is imitating everyone else's desires and competing for the same scarce resources, societies need a pressure release valve. And they find one through scapegoating. But here's what makes it so insidious. Scapegoating doesn't just feel righteous. It produces genuine relief. Your anxiety drops. Your group cohesion strengthens. the confusion and tension you were feeling, gone. Because now you know what the problem is. It's them. This is why scapegoating is functionally indistinguishable from solving a real problem. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between we found the disease and we found someone to blame for our suffering. The reward circuit is identical. Modern cancel culture, political polarization, conspiracy movements, they all follow this ancient pattern. And the digital age has made it worse because now you can feel that righteous relief dozens of times per day. Every quote, tweet, dunk, every ratio. Every time your group identifies an outsider who finally explains what's wrong with the world. It's not that these people are never wrong. Sometimes they are. But notice, how often does punishing them actually solve the underlying problem? And how quickly do you need to find the next scapegoat? You're not solving problems. You're treating anxiety. And like any addiction, you need bigger doses over time. So how do you identify when you're caught in this pattern? This requires asking uncomfortable questions that your ego will resist. Did you want this thing before you saw someone else with it? Not just consumer products, but careers, lifestyle choices, political opinions. Can you trace the aspiration back to a specific model, someone whose approval or status you were unconsciously seeking? Are you defending a belief primarily because your social group defends it? Would you still hold this position if it meant becoming an outsider, losing social capital, facing criticism from people whose approval you value? Have you ever felt the urge to want something more intensely precisely because someone else wanted it to? That competitive craving is pure rivalry in action. When was the last time you genuinely changed your mind about something significant? If the answer is never or not in years, you're probably locked in patterns that have calcified into identity structures. Remember those sneakers? That political position? Now ask yourself honestly, where do these really come from? The trap is recognizing that asking these questions threatens the narrative of authentic selfhood that we all desperately want to maintain. Nobody wants to discover they're a sophisticated imitation machine. Girard wasn't optimistic about escaping mimetic desire. He thought it was woven into the fabric of human consciousness. And honestly, he was probably right. But here's the thing. You don't need complete freedom. You need leverage. Small moments of awareness that create slight deviations from pure mimetic autopilot. Over years, slight deviations compound into a different trajectory. First, the model audit. When you feel a sudden desire or conviction, pause. Ask, who specifically modeled this for me? What do I want from them? Approval, status, validation? Is there someone I respect who wants the opposite? You're not stopping the desire. You're just shining a light on its origin. Sometimes that's enough to weaken its grip. Second, seek out conflicting models deliberately, not to copy them instead, but to break the illusion of objective desirability. When you see people you respect wanting contradictory things, the spell weakens. You start to see the machinery itself. Third, track the friction. Ideas that come to you easily wrapped in social approval, suspect. Ideas that require you to withstand pressure, more likely to be genuine. Not always. Contrarians can be mimetic too, copying rebellion itself, but it's a useful heuristic. Fourth, practice small acts of nonconformity, not to be different for its own sake, but to exercise the muscle of independent choice. Order something unusual. Question the consensus in low-stakes situations. You're training your nervous system to tolerate the discomfort of divergence. But here's the hard truth. Even doing all this, you'll still be mostly mimetic. The goal isn't authenticity. That might be an illusion anyway. The goal is to copy better, to borrow from wiser sources, to imitate people who've actually paid the cost of their beliefs rather than people who've just discovered them yesterday on Twitter. You're not escaping the trap. You're just becoming more selective about which trap you're in. And here's the final paradox I can't avoid. I'm teaching you about mimetic desire through a video that will spread mimetically if it resonates with you. If this video goes viral, Thousands of people will suddenly want to do model audits and seek friction, not because they independently discovered these tools, but because they saw others valuing them. The critique of mimesis spreads mimetically. Even the desire to be non-mimetic is borrowed from others. So what do we do with that? We accept it. We stop chasing the impossible fantasy of pure authenticity and instead ask, what's worth copying? What sources of desire lead to human flourishing rather than destruction? What models of behavior make us more alive rather than more algorithmic? The trap is inescapable, but the quality of the trap is up to you. The mimetic trap isn't disappearing. If anything, it's intensifying as our world becomes more connected, more competitive, and more saturated with models of desire competing for our attention every moment. But understanding Girard's insights gives us a map of the territory. We can see the mechanism operating, even if we can't fully escape it. We can question our desires rather than assume they're authentically ours. We can resist the gravitational pull of collective foolishness, even when it promises certainty and belonging. Because the most dangerous thing we might ever imitate is the belief that we're not imitating anything at all. Think about that opening question. The green juice was harmless mimesis. 1930s Germany was catastrophic mimesis, but they operated on the identical psychological machinery. The difference wasn't in how the pattern worked. It was in what got poured through the pattern. And here's what keeps me up at night. We never know in the moment which version we're participating in. The German citizens didn't wake up one day and think, today I'll participate in collective insanity. They thought they were making reasonable choices based on what everyone around them believed to be true. They thought they were the ones who finally understood what was really happening, just like we do. So next time your feed homogenizes around a new idea, product, or outrage, you have a choice. Not a choice to escape mimesis, that's not available to humans, but a choice about what you do with the awareness. Will you perform a model audit? Will you seek the friction? Will you ask where this desire actually came from? Or will you simply hit add to cart on another piece of your borrowed identity, another fragment of someone else's worldview, another step toward a destination you never actually chose? The trap is real. The mechanism is running right now, in your mind as you watch this. The question isn't whether you're trapped. The question is, what are you going to copy next?